conversational.
Sure.
This is not polished. This is not a production. This is you and I hanging out. That's what this is. Two dudes. Two Mustangs.
I dig it.
This is two Mustangs having a podcast. Obviously, we will intro it, and then they'll put the podcast up however they want. They may even have some of this stuff before. So I do want to welcome officially my friend Kyle Hamsher to the Brook Hill podcast. Can we get the clap right there?
Oh,
there we go.
Thank you.
Yes,
all of you.
All right, very, very impressive. So, all right, who is Kyle Hamsher? That's probably who is this guy? That is what everybody is wondering here. Let me tell you the important stuff.
Okay.
Senior counselor.
Yes.
Of the Mustang bunkhouse. That's all you need to know. What years were you senior counselors at Mustang?
So I was a one-and-done counselor.
Okay,
I was
one of those.
Yeah, one of those guys. I was the senior counselor of the Mustang bunkhouse for the summer of 2004.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but
let's go.
Was JC a couple summers before that, all through high school. Was a camper for 4 years prior to that, and so that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
That's it. That's all. Yeah. and now you currently work.
Yes, I do.
It's
important.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tell them about your job, and obviously we'll get into some of that leadership
Sure.
of what you do there.
Absolutely.
What do you currently do?
Yeah. So I currently my official title is
official title.
Because
okay.
It sounds fancier than it is.
Okay.
But
all
my
right.
official title is Senior Manager of Entertainment Marketing for the Houston Astros.
Okay.
The baseball team in Major League Baseball.
I like that.
But what it mostly encompasses, just to sugarcoat it a little bit, is I'm the mascot of the team.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm Orbit, the mascot of the Houston Astros.
So it seems like a bunch of guys got together and like, all right, we want to hire this guy, but we don't want to just tell him he's the mascot. Let's come up with a good title.
Well, there was actually a method to that madness, because prior to that, I was in between jobs. Okay. And we can dive into that a little bit
Absolutely.
later. But I was in between jobs, and I realized that, outside the realm of sports entertainment or just sports in general, you, in order to get noticed on, a lot of these job sites and stuff like that, you kind of need an evergreen title sometimes.
Okay.
So if I were to, if my title was mascot coordinator, which is what it was for the job I had before, and I'm trying to apply for a job outside of the realm of sports, I don't get noticed as often. So when I got in there, I said, you know what? I think a good title would be Senior Manager of Entertainment Marketing. And they said, okay, cool. And so that was it.
So you got to help create?
I did.
Okay.
I certainly did. Yeah.
I like that.
But it encompasses a lot more than just like, and we can dive into this, but it does encompass a lot more than just dressing out and showing up and, for lack of a better term, goofing off.
Absolutely.
There's definitely a science to it.
Absolutely. Now, I want to get into this, but I also want to talk. Oh, no. Before we do this.
Okay.
We want to see how good you are.
Oh, my.
So one and done, this could hurt you.
Oh, dear.
Let's see. Okay. We want to play a game.
My favorite.
I know you're a gamer. I know you're up for that. So Olivia, in just a second, is going to put a 30-second timer up on the board. This is a Brook Hill game because this is the Brook Hill podcast.
Makes sense.
So the game is this. This is trivia. Brook Hill trivia. You need to name as many Brook Hill things in 3 categories. I'm going to give you 3 categories. So maybe your kids may have helped you since they've been coming to camp. So you got camp songs.
Camp
So you
songs.
can just name any Brook Hill camp songs. You can name any Brook Hill cabin, girls or guys.
Okay.
And any Brook Hill activities. Those are the 3 categories.
So that last one's a trick question because the activies are much different.
No, but I'm okay. It's okay if you name it doesn't have to be current.
Fair. Now, do I need to do one? Do I have to do all 3 categories?
You can fly amongst the 3. You can just be fly.
Okay.
The whole point is how many can you name, and obviously it's designed to confuse you by naming 3 categories.
Okay.
But the whole point is, can you be the leader after 30 seconds?
What's the current? Is there
the current leader is 27, I believe, and who is the current leader? Callan, our current lead counselor, Callan Smith.
Okay.
So we don't have an alumni that is in the lead. We have a current counselor.
So maybe that should be, and I'm stalling here, obviously. All right, I'll be quiet.
Okay, are we ready?
I'm just saying you should separate. Okay,
They should be separated.
I think so
All
for
right.
my own sake.
Like an over 30 and under 30 league.
Something like that. Okay.
Okay. All right. You ready? Timer on the board.
Yes, ready?
Ready. Wait, it's not on the board. Can we get the timer on the board?
Okay. Why don't you? There was a little camo, little red box. Light the fire. Okay. Then Percherons, Mustangs, Hackneys, Broncos, Buckskins, Morgans, Walkers, Appaloosas, Pacers is a new one. So now we're gonna go do go-karts. We're gonna do fun swim. The little cabin in the woods. This little light of mine. And then carnival night. I don't know if that counts.
We'll accept it. What did he get to? What's his?
21.
21 is the
man.
It's the unofficial number. We will obviously
Okay.
go back and watch it, and,
Okay.
and we will make sure that you're on the proper spot of the leaderboard.
Gotcha, man. Okay.
Is
Got
that
all worked up
fun?
It's
Yes.
fun, but I got all worked up after that, man.
Yeah. Oh, I absolutely love it. And then also, this just happened not too long ago, because I'm not sure when this is going to air. You were Arkansan for the day.
I was
That's a
Arkansan
big
of the
deal.
day. Yes, it was a big deal because unfortunately I'm not anymore. They have other Arkansans of
That
the
has
day.
expired.
Yes, this was I think Wednesday. Today
Okay.
is Saturday.
Okay.
I think it was Wednesday or so. But that in and of itself is actually a kind of a cool story.
How
okay?
did that even happen?
So there is
Do you
some
know Craig?
yes and no. So there's a little bit of a backstory. So just for everyone who is unfamiliar, so today's THV, which is the, I guess a CBS. I
Yes,
don't want to be wrong.
it is.
CBS
Yes.
affiliated. Okay, in Little Rock, they do an Arkansan of the day. Craig O'Neill, who has been a personality for years upon years in Arkansas, started as a radio DJ. Went on to do sports broadcasting and now does the evening news. Icon in Arkansas. So let's rewind back when I was a senior in high school. Okay, I started mascotting when I was a senior in high school.
Come on.
Yeah, he comes to and our basketball team was really good. Like
Okay.
they went to state and unfortunately lost at state, but they were looking really good. So back then he was a sports analyst or sportscast, whatever you want to call it. He did sports for the news, and he came to do the new cover the team.
Right.
And they said, okay, look, you got to check out this mascot we got. Okay. And this is unbeknownst to me. I'm still at home, and my phone rings, and they're like, hey, Kyle, you got to come over here. Craig O'Neill's here. He wants to do a story on you. I was like, really? No way. Okay, cool. I do the story. It was real flattering. It was really awesome. They start off by like, look, there's this amazing basketball team, but they're all being upstaged by this guy. And so I got to do this story. Well, fast forward a couple months later, the Arkansas Travelers baseball team,
Yep.
minor league baseball team here in Little Rock, they need a performer. And Craig O'Neill's like, I got the guy. And so I got that job for a summer, okay? And then the rest is kind of history. So this was almost 20 years ago.
Wow.
Okay, almost 20 years ago. Well, a couple weeks ago, my dad was at a function for Baptist Health, the hospital.
Right.
And Craig happened to be there. And so my dad made a point to go up and say, look, you don't know who I am, but my son, you did a story on my son almost 20 years ago. In fact, yeah, almost 20 years ago. And I just want to let you know where he is today. And he thought that was just the coolest thing. He was just like, oh, dude, we got to.
He had no idea.
He had no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had no idea, and so he wanted to do. It wasn't really a story because it was only like a 30-second spot.
Right.
I called him. He called me, and we chatted for like a half hour. Just on what I've been up to, what the job entails. And some of the various other aspects that it does entail.
Come on.
In addition to game days and appearances and stuff like that, and he just thought it was the coolest thing. And I was just like, dude, I'm amongst royalty here. Like you're talking to me,
Right.
Craig
O'Neill.
Craig O'Neill,
Yeah.
and so yeah, it was really cool. So I was Arkansan of the day.
Come on.
And it was funny because for the next 24 hours, it was like, hey, can I can I get a refill, sweetheart? It's like, I am the Arkansan of the day, just
This
saying.
is my day.
Right, my
I
day.
love it.
But yeah, so it was cool.
So how did you get into mascotting, if that is a getting into, in high school? Where did that Where did that come from? You're just a entertaining guy. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
know you got a big entertaining background, but what made you apply for the mascot at your high school?
So my best friend in high school, his brother did it. Okay. So I always just kind of thought, oh, that's unique. That's kind of neat. He did it in college. Well, he did it in high school. Ironically, the same high school I went to. This was 8 years prior, and he went on to do it in college. And then when we were, I guess, sophomores in high school, his brother had the opportunity to audition for one of the. I don't want to call it minor. It was an arena football team here at the time, and I was like, whoa. So he can actually make that into a, for lack of a better term, career, or at the time just a job. I was like, that's really neat.
Right.
And so I kind of and so when he did ultimately get that job, I ended up working as his handler. Okay, which is the guy who back then it was just keep him from getting beat up. These days it's way more intensive. But so I got to get a firsthand look at, okay, you don't just put that costume on and walk around. Like there's an art form to it, and there's certain ways that you have to act physically, and certain ways you have to react, and
because it's all nonverbal.
It's all completely nonverbal, and if you think about that, this is what a lot of people don't realize either. It's non-facial, because you not only are you nonverbal, but if you think about it, the only other way to elicit emotion is by moving your face.
Right, kind of mime things.
Yes, but then you take that out, because even mimes can use their eyes; they use your mouth.
Exactly right.
So then
Expression.
you take that away, and because the head and the face is neutral,
right?
It's still.
Wow.
So you have to use your entire body.
Wow.
To elicit emotion.
Okay.
And so I was like, whoa, that's really cool.
So you're picking this up by watching.
I'm picking this up
as you're
by
a handler, and you're like, okay, I'm learning. I'm learning what this is all about.
I'm learning what this is about, and then so I was like, okay, I want to see if I can do that. And so it was interesting because I decided I wanted to do it in high school for my senior year, but I was heavily involved in band. I was heavily involved in drama, and so it's kind of like,
What'd you play in band?
Trumpet.
Trumpet.
Yeah,
okay.
I was a trumpet player.
Big drama guy.
Big, and I was doing some entertaining and all that good entertainment type stuff on the side anyway, but I was like, this is really cool. I think I could be good at it. So I did. I auditioned, I got it, and then naturally my band director was like, okay, so how are you going to make this work? I was like, haven't gotten that far. But anyway, she was really patient. She was really awesome, and so I did that, and then so that's how I got into it. And then I eventually ended up doing it in college, and then shortly after college, I got some professional work, which ultimately led to where I am now.
And what'd you do in college? You like for your college mascot, or are you saying like you did with the minor league team while you were in college?
So a little bit of both. So this is kind of a really cool story. When I was in high school, I said, you know what, I do want to do this in college, but at the time, Arkansas State was the only college where I got a full ride to. Okay, now I had gotten scholarships and accepted and out-of-state tuition waived for other schools that I was more interested in, but I was like, yeah, you know what? At the time, our family wasn't in the best financial situation, and so I said, you know what? I'm going to go for 2 years, get my basics out of the way, and then if I want, I can transfer and then perform later on. Well, lo and behold, the summer before, they came up with a character like that summer.
Come on.
And it was so funny because Arkansas State now are the Red Wolves.
That's right.
Back then, they were the Indians. Okay.
Oh, okay. I didn't
Yeah.
know
So, and they had a Native American. They had students who would dress as Native American. Which, fun fact, Bradley Hyman was the chief for a number of years.
No way.
Sure was. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
So So I'm gonna have Brad on this. So,
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In this next year, I've got him. I mean, I haven't scheduled him yet, but I'm hoping.
Yeah,
to
you got to ask him about it. It was
Yes.
shortly after we were both senior counselors. It was like maybe a year or two after. But yeah,
Right.
he was the chief because there was a chief, a princess, and a brave.
Okay.
But they were very stoic. They because there was sensitivities.
That's right,
with how Native Americans were being portrayed, and so they wanted to come up with something that, in their words, was for just the kids.
Right.
So they came up with Red, who was a spirit character.
Okay.
And they were very adamant. It's not a mascot. It's a spirit character.
Okay.
And say, okay, so I heard about this and I reached out and I said, hey, my name is Kyle. I have experience. I happen to be going to Arkansas State in the fall. Do you have a performer? They said, no. They said, what are you doing this weekend? I said, well, nothing. They said, we have an event like a alumni luncheon or something that we need the character there for. If you show up, that can kind of be your audition. I'm like, okay, cool. So I showed up. I did the thing.
Crazy.
Got the gig. And then and so I did that all through college, but also during the summers. My freshman year, I was here at Brook Hill. And then the couple summers after that, I did some minor league work as a now defunct arena football team.
Okay.
And technically, I was employed by them the summer that I was here. But, Stephen was like, hey, that's a little bit of a conflict of interest. And even though camp is over on Saturday, you want to be here over the weekends.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To be able to connect with the other
Right.
staff members and, form those relationships. And so I said, okay. And so that first summer, I was kind of, the weekends where we had games that conflicted with camp, I had someone fill in for me.
Come on.
And then, after that, I worked for that team as well. I ended up teaching some summer camps after where you could actually teach high schoolers and college kids how to be Mascot, which is
Crazy.
really kind of cool.
Yep.
And then in the middle of all that, I changed my major because I was originally going to school on a speech communication and theater arts major, which is ultimately, hey, I want to teach high school drama. That's what I wanted to do.
Right.
But a couple years, like by my sophomore year, I was like, okay, as I say this as humbly as possible, I'm pretty good at this.
Okay.
And I was having a blast doing theater
This
stuff.
might be a thing.
This might be a thing. You know what I mean? And so I changed my major from speech, comm, and theater arts to theater.
Okay.
And so I go to tell my parents this, and my dad's like, "Oh, changing your major to theater, you're gonna be an actor?" I was like, "No, worse." So
I'm gonna be a mascot.
yeah, that was my and
What did your dad say? Seriously, what?
I don't even remember because it's kind of like
I support you, son.
there was a lot of questions,
Right.
A lot of and even to this, now it's a little bit different. But I remember for I wouldn't say many years, but for a long time when I would tell people that, hey, I want to do this, they would go, oh, okay. What are you gonna do after that? And I was like, it's legit. You can legitimately make a decent, respectable living doing it. Of course, if you work hard enough and if you're working for the right people, just like any other job. But that's what I did. And even whenever I started dating my wife, she was like, okay, so, we're getting to know each other. What are your aspirations? What are your dreams? And she's like, so what do you want to do? What do you want to do for a job? I was like, I would be a professional mascot. And she's like, that's what I was afraid of. And I was legit. I was like, hey, look, I'm just telling you now, like we're not far into this thing. So if you want to get out,
Right.
now's the time to get out.
Right.
And so, but no, she's been amazingly supportive.
But that's when you know that it's real love.
Oh yeah.
When you say I'm gonna be a mascot, and she stayed. She didn't run.
She didn't run. And even one time we did an event, and she had to be my handler.
Yeah.
And so it was she was two handlers that day, the first time and the last time. And so but it was fun. So yes.
That is incredible. I could only imagine. It's equivalent maybe to, hey, I want to be a YouTuber. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
It's equivalent to that.
Right.
But I always tell young people, when God puts a dream and a vision and giftings in you, you can't expect other people to understand it because it's not their dreams and giftings. Mm-hmm. You can't expect that. Mm-hmm. But that was in your heart, and then God begins to make a way, and then you also, how did you get to Florida, right?
Yes. So I was in Florida. So immediately after graduation, that's when reality set in. Okay. Now, luckily, when I graduated, there was about 7 openings in sports world, which is unheard of.
Wow.
Because if you think about the math here, there's 4. I mean, technically there's more, but you got your 4 major sports organizations,
just like hockey, football.
Yep. NFL, NHL, NBA, MLB.
Okay.
Now there's MLS as well.
Sure.
You know, and there's a number
and it's
of
growing. MLS
It
is
is
really,
growing,
in the States.
yes.
It's obviously huge.
obviously
worldwide.
yes, and even of those, you know, there's some minor league teams that might offer a full-time job or something like that. But
Okay.
if you say on average, there's 30 teams in each of those leagues, and of those. So let's see, that makes it about between 120 and 150 jobs that even exist
Wow.
in the United States.
That's not many.
That's not many. And then you got to consider, okay, how many of those are going to have openings
Okay.
year in and year out? So 7 was a big number, okay? Of all of those teams, I only got to audition with 2,
Okay.
which one was the Cleveland Indians, Cleveland Guardians now,
Okay.
but back then they were the
Right.
Cleveland Indians. I'm noticing a pattern. And then the Florida Panthers, which is the hockey team.
Okay.
And it's kind of funny because there's a little funny story. The Indians performer at the time he's like, I'm retiring. You know, I'm getting a little older in age. I'm going to retire. Now, this was in 2007.
Okay.
So this was roughly 15 years ago. And I'm retiring, so we're going to try to find another performer. They brought a number of us in. We all auditioned, all that good stuff. Meanwhile, Florida Panthers, they had an opening. And similar, you know, hey, we're going to have you come in, audition. Well, at the time, I was kind of leaning more towards the Indians job. It seemed more appealing to me for whatever reason. I still to this day can't explain.
Sure.
But I had a great audition with the Panthers, and they offered me the job. And I was like, dude, well, that's awesome. You know, going to move 1,200 miles away from everyone I've ever known. And so, but before I accepted the job, I wanted to see, like, hey, with the Indians, like, hey, where do we stand? Just so I'm aware, so I'm not shortchanging myself at all. Right. So I call them up, and they're like, oh, you know what? We actually decided to go in a different direction, you know. So I'm like, okay, fair enough. I got this job waiting for me.
Okay.
That's great. Well, come to find out, that guy who was going to retire, they're like, we don't really want you to retire, and we don't think you do either. He's like, yeah, you're right. And he's still there.
Oh,
to this,
still
yeah,
there?
he's still there.
Have
yeah.
y'all talked about this
Oh
story?
yeah, all the time. He's one of my best friends.
Come on.
Such a great dude, such a cool dude. His name is Dan. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
But such a cool dude.
That's incredible.
And we still laugh about that to this day. Like, golly, do you remember when I was all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and coming in? But at any rate, no, I worked in Florida for 5 years. And then, you know, so that was hockey.
Okay.
Little bit of a culture shock, both from a sports perspective and just a regional perspective, because
Okay.
I grew up my entire life in Arkansas.
Okay.
Okay. Even going to college, just 2 hours away from my mom's hometown. Yeah. So that's how I got the job in Florida. And well, I'll kind of skip ahead to how I wound up in Houston, because it's my favorite story to tell.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I was on the lower end of a work stoppage. You know, there was a lockout in 2012. Some teams, unfortunately, had to make the very tough decision to
Sure.
make layoffs. I happened to be working for one of those teams, and unfortunately, I was laid off.
Sure.
You know, it happens. You know, it's I hate using this cliche, because when people are like, it's not personal, it's business, but
Right.
sometimes they're really tough business decisions that have to be made.
Right.
Well, I'm here with a 6-month-old child, you know, 1,200 miles away from anyone we've ever known, you know. And it's really interesting, because I got to back up a little bit, because this is pretty integral to this story. Because we were so far away from anyone and anything that we had ever known, it was tough, but it was especially tough on my wife. You know, not especially once we started having a family, and she had a baby the same time that her sister had a baby, and so being so far away, they didn't get to share a lot of those firsts,
Right.
and stuff like that. And so it got to the point where, for the longest time, we were trying to run away. It's like, okay, we're trying to find. Okay, let's just start looking for, you know, maybe something that's closer to home. You know,
Sure.
I don't think we need to be here. You know, let's keep trying to run away and all this kind of stuff. And it got to the point where, you know, my wife sat me down. I was like, look, how about this? If you aren't able to secure a job that's closer to home over the next 18 months, can we just move back to Arkansas? You know, that's how
Wow.
much she missed home.
Wow.
And I had to think. I was like, oh, come on, you know, this is my you know, my dream, my destiny, my passion, you know, whatever
Right,
you want to call
right.
it. And so it was tough for me. Well, as things began to get tougher because it was a tough environment at work,
Sure.
with the people that were there at the time.
Sure.
Everything's wonderful over there now. I keep up with a lot of people there.
Okay.
But it was getting more difficult, and so I said, okay, if I'm unable to secure, I agreed to it. Hey, over the next 18 months, if it doesn't happen, we'll make it happen. Well, it wasn't long after that we just kind of said, you know what? Why don't we just stop running? God has us here for a reason.
Right.
There's something here that there's a reason he wants us here.
Right.
Let's stop running and sit and try and figure that out.
Okay.
And so, we got super plugged into the church. We started
Come on.
doing all this awesome stuff, and lo and behold, I get fired. And I was like, okay, God, we literally just said,
Right.
like, what do you want us to do? We're here, okay? And there's got to be something you want for us to do here. And I get fired, with no prospects at all. And like I said, we had gotten very, very involved with the church, and it's one of those really cool churches like that has the big production numbers. And
Sure.
so it was so cool to be able to serve in a capacity that my talents were being utilized.
Come on.
Beyond the aspect of volunteering with the youth and all that stuff, which I was doing,
Right.
Right. But they were really great about being like, oh, you know what? You're a performer. We can use you in our creative piece
Right.
for this day because it's very creative. So we're doing all that, and we're trying to figure out what in the world, what do we do next? And that's where I learned. I'm like, okay, now I got a job hunt, and this mascot coordinator title isn't helping me up. What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? We prayed about it, and all this stuff. And this is the best part of the story because not long after that, we're at a park. Got our 6-month-old son in a carriage stroller. My phone rings out of nowhere. It's a 713 number. I say, what is 713? Who is that? I don't know. Answer it. I'm like, okay. Hello, this is Kyle. Hi, is this Kyle? Yes, it is. Hi, this is George Postolos, the CEO and president of the Houston Astros. Do you have a minute to talk? Yes, sir, I do. How may I help you? And that's literally, like, I'm telling you, dude, like I tell people, it's like, man, sometimes when God closes a door, he opens a water park.
Come on.
And so it was from that. It was literally they were looking for a performer, and a little nugget to this story. It was interesting the way that they were going about doing it because they were going to do like a you make the call thing, where they said, anyone who's anyone can apply to be the mascot, and then we're going to have fans make the call. And so, I mean, heck, I was between jobs, and so I'm like, okay, I'll apply. And so I put my name in the hat. They called me up. They said, hey, cool, would you like to come and audition? I'm like, yeah, cool. Is someone going to call about my flight and lodging and all that stuff? They're like, no, you're going to pay your own way. I was like, oh. And even if I wasn't between jobs, I wouldn't have done that,
Right,
So I'm like, okay, well, thanks anyway. So what it ultimately happened, they got pretty far along in the process and said, you know what, are we really doing this the right way? They
Right.
kind of took a step back, said, are we really doing this the right way? Did we kind of limit ourselves by only saying, limiting it to people in Houston or superfans or what have you, people who weren't willing to or weren't able to make that trip? And
Right.
so they said, let's do this. Let's go back through the resumes and just double check. Okay, let's just double check to see if there's anyone that we shouldn't, that isn't worth at least an additional conversation.
Come on.
And they pulled my resume. And so sure
That's
enough,
unbelievable.
yeah, unbelievable. And it's been fantastic ever since. This is my 10th season.
Wow.
My 10th season there.
Is that common, uncommon, like that number of years?
It kind of a lot. It's just like anything else. It kind of depends.
Okay.
Some people might get into it thinking that it's going to be really fun, really cool. They do it for a number of years.
Okay.
It can be, but it's just like any other job. It
Right.
depends on, obviously, your talent level. It depends on who you're working for.
Right.
Because I often say that the big difference between what I was doing for one team and the other, there wasn't much bit of a difference in terms of my output or my quality of work or even my work ethic.
Okay.
It just happened to be who I was doing it for.
Yeah.
Because, as you know, recently we had a lockout.
Right.
In MLB.
That's right.
And before that, there was a pandemic.
Right.
Where we were on lockdown. And you want to talk about having a little bit of PTSD in terms of like, oh boy, here we go again.
I've been through this in Florida.
I've been through this before. I mean, now
Yep.
granted, we were a lot more prepared, just
Sure.
in terms of financially, mentally, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
But, luckily, because there were some tough decisions that did need to be made
Sure.
throughout that process, but I was able to sustain
Yep.
throughout. So yeah,
That's
kinda it.
unbelievable.
Mhm.
But as you tell that story, I just think God, He prepares us before He opens that door. Because it seemed like He started pushing y'all toward each other. It really,
Yeah.
pushed you into church, pushed you into laying that foundation. And you only can see where you're going when you're going downhill.
Yep.
But you were headed uphill. God was taking you somewhere, and you couldn't see it. You didn't understand it, but you began to rely on Him. And I think He laid this foundation before you were ready. Do you
Right.
do you feel that?
I do, and I've always loved the saying that every great comeback starts with a great setback.
Yeah.
Every great comeback starts with a setback.
Come on.
And so that, like, for us, it was that, but we were also our hearts were being prepared long before that because of some of the difficulties we were facing.
Okay.
And I remember, once I had finally gotten the job, and the hardest thing was leaving our church family, because we had gotten so plugged in. We had just formulated so many relationships, even over the course of the past year or so that we were
Right.
there. That was the hardest thing to leave. And I just remember after our Christmas services, I had gone backstage. I'm taking off my costume, doing all this kind of stuff, and I didn't ask anyone to talk, but the worship pastor comes by, and just like, hey man, how you doing? Because he knew that it was tough for us to leave the church.
Come on.
I say leave we didn't leave the church. We
Right.
just left
That church in
Right,
that
exactly.
area.
Yeah. And I was like, I don't get it. I said, it's so weird to me that for so many years we were running and running and running trying to get out of there. And then we finally submit to God and say, okay, you want us here, and now we're leaving. And he's like, well, you're now closer to family, right? I'm like, yeah. He's like, that's everything you ever wanted, right? He's like, yeah. He said, well, don't you think that once you finally submit to the Lord, He'll give you the desires of your heart?
Come on.
I was like,
That's
I keep forgetting that there's pastor at the end of your title, worship. I just always thought, sang, strung the guitar and sang the
Right.
songs. But no, man, like that's when it clicked. It was like, oh, dude. I mean, for so many years, we wanted so badly to move closer to home. And, and now we're able to come home quite often. It's only
Right.
like what, a 7 minute or
It's not bad.
Yeah, 7 minutes. 7-hour drive on even a bad day, and it's scenic and it's wonderful. And on top of that too, the greatest thing, and I truly, the whole thing is God, obviously, but when I say I've reconnected with just about everybody from Brook Hill,
Come on.
since then, because and I could probably name most of them off. Like I remember first moving to Houston and hearing about Katy, Texas. I was like, wait a minute. I know someone from Katy, Texas, Taylor Hankins.
Yep.
I remember him
Yep.
saying he was from Katy, Texas. I reached out to him.
Yep.
He came
Legacy.
to a game, yeah. And then shortly after that, I run into Maylee Glass at Chick-fil-A in Texarkana. What's going on? Here's my kids. Here's your kids. How's Mitchell? He's a dentist. Oh my gosh. Then I run into Bill Morrell at Chick-fil-A. Okay. Then I run into Nurse Beth at our
Yes.
new church home. She's there visiting.
Come on.
And then after that, oh my God. I learned that you're from Houston.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so we
Yeah,
reconnected.
you and I swap cities.
Yeah, we swapped cities. We reconnected, and then I started getting to know Mike and everybody else. Your sister,
Yes.
Melissa.
Yes.
My sister cabin, right?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. In my year, the Mustangs and the Bays, I
Okay.
believe, were the and I think I got that right. But yeah, I'm
she'll
pretty
be
sure.
upset with me. I don't know.
I'm 90%, but
Okay.
she was my sister cabin.
Yeah, okay.
Yep, she still lived in Houston and now has moved practically she
Right.
teaches right down the street
Yes.
from where we live,
Yes.
where we're zoned. Brooks and Lindsay Perry,
Right?
okay, they moved to Houston. We
Come on.
had dinner with them a number of times, not nearly enough because I
Right.
seriously wanted to spend more time with them, but my schedule's just crazy enough
Right.
because Brooks was very instrumental that year that I was my my
Right,
one and
when
only
you- yeah,
year.
yep.
Because there was so many times I was just like, I don't know if I'm doing this right.
Yeah.
Brooks, like I would either overhear what he's doing over there, or I mean, I remember every year after the crucifixion,
Every week,
every week, the counselors would head back before the campers do, and every single night we would just sit there and just converse and talk life and everything. And so,
So how big was it when Steve said, "You don't want to miss the weekends"? Because that summer, that built this community that you now have come
Sure.
full circle.
right? Oh yeah.
That you had built.
Yes.
And had you missed the weekends and kind of gone, God always protects us from ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so, he's like, I want you to do this. Hey, I've stopped this job in Florida. Yeah, but I'm building something in you guys, and then I'm going to give you the desires of your. I mean, it's so cool to look back, but you can only see it when you look back.
Yeah.
Because when you're in the middle of it, you don't feel it, you don't understand it, you don't see it. What's God doing here?
Exactly. And I've learned through that situation that when we face hardships, it's easy to ask God why, but you should be asking God what. It's like, okay, instead of why is this happening to me, it's like, okay. We have to set aside our own pride. We have to set aside our own desires. Okay, what are you up to? And so that's it's just like anything else. You go through. You should. Well, the Bible says, consider it pure joy. When you face hardships, and it's tough to do that in the moment. And and I think this is the understatement of the century. The last 2 years, we've all had hardships.
Yes.
Unbelievable, unfathomable hardships. But sometimes you just have to take a breath and take a step back and be like, okay, you're up to something.
That's right.
I don't see it right now because I'm finite, but I'm willing to submit to figure out what that is in your time.
Oh, for us as a camp, it was the best, worst thing that's ever happened to us.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Because it makes you step back, and I know you're the same way with some of the things y'all did with Orbit. Is it makes you rethink how are we going to do what we're doing, and what changes did we already need to make that this is going to force us to make anyway. From our drop off pickup to just all the things that we did, and so many parents were bragging on us, and in 2020 they were like, "You should keep this." But in the middle of it, you're like, God, what are you doing? This is so frustrating.
Yeah.
And
you
like,
don't
I'm
even
about to catapult you.
Yeah, and I think some of the most frustrating parts is sometimes you don't even know if it's the right thing to do.
Oh no, you don't.
You're kind of going in a circle, and you're
Right.
like, I think this is right, because that was what was tough for me. Is as we were navigating the lockdown and the pandemic and what have you, it's kind of like, okay, what's our next step? What should we be doing?
Right.
And no one really had the right answer. I desperately wanted someone to sit back and be like, don't you worry, I'm the leader here, and I'm going to provide clear and concise direction. But I think everybody was doing that, and I think it's at that point that you start looking for opportunity, because that's one thing I learned about at camp is the idea of approaching your work proactively. Not you as opposed to reactively, because reactively is waiting to be told what to do.
Right. That's right.
Proactively is seeing the problem and trying to come up with a solution. Like I always remember as a JC constantly checking those trash can liners. Right? You want to be the first one to be like, oh, that one's getting up, this one's mine.
That's right.
And then you run and toss it into the dumpster, which funny story.
Okay.
So that was always a bit. I don't know where you guys find these trash can liners, by the way, but they can haul a Buick. Okay. So I don't even know if this is still a thing, but back in my day, we would the JCs would get together and see who could launch their trash.
Yep. Still a thing.
Yep. See who can launch it the furthest. And of course, you got to make it into the dumpster and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
Well, I get to college, right? And there's this banquet for the theater. And I was like, don't worry, I'll take the trash out. so I get me and my buddy out there. I was like, dude, watch this. And I'm across the parking lot. I'm like, I'm going to make it. He's like, no, you're not, dude. What is wrong with you? I was like, oh, yeah, just watch. And so I launch it. And mid-flight, that trash bag just explodes and rains everything that we had for dinner all over the parking lot. And my buddy's like, see, what did I tell you? I told you that I was going to. I was like, okay, well, guess we're not in camp anymore.
Right. No.
But no. So being
industrial. We have the industrial one.
yeah. So being approaching your work proactively. So another thing that we do in addition to obviously games and appearances and stuff is we do a number of school assembly programs throughout the year. Okay. And I've written these, I've produced them, I've scripted the whole thing. And this could be a whole nother podcast because, we are really big on the power of fun, play, and positive messaging. Exactly. Yeah.
That's Brookhill.
I
Fun
always,
connection in Jesus right there. I love it.
I always brag that every single job I've ever had has led me to where I am right now. And whether that's how to roll a speaker cord to how to perform in front of kids. And we always get a lot of really great feedback from educators and teachers. They're like, okay, we have a lot of programs come through, but yours is fun.
Let's go.
Some of them, they have good messaging, but they're just boring. Yours is fun, And our mantra is educate, entertain, and empower. Okay. And
educate, entertain, and empower.
Yes,
so good.
Educate, entertain, and empower. And so we cover a multitude of different subjects, whether it's anti-bullying, whether it's literacy.
Come on.
Preparing for the test taking, making smart choices, like during Red Ribbon Week. I'm in the process of trying to write one based on the 6 pillars of character. So a character show.
Let's go.
And it's all about positive messaging.
That's
so
right.
we're not going to go in and say, don't be a bully.
That's right.
Because that's negative.
Right.
We
that's
say,
right.
hey, stand up for one another. That's positive. You know what I mean? And
so Brookhill. I mean, it's so key.
Oh, yeah.
We don't have rules here.
Yeah. And it's awesome.
Here's what we're going to do.
Yeah. It's been a lot of fun. It's been amazing. But of course, whenever lockdown happened, all of that got taken away. And it's like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And I'm looking over at Olivia here. She's got a stream deck over there because I said, you know what? What if we made them all completely virtual? Performed over Zoom. But my big thing with anything, and this comes from whether what I'm doing with the Astros or what I'm doing on my own entertainment stuff, which we can dive into a little bit later. But it's not so much, I'm not here to perform at you. I'm not here to say, look what I can do. You sit back and enjoy the show. It's it's interactive.
Yes.
Let's do this together.
Right.
There's going to be some byplay. I have this amazing gift to share with you, but I'm also understanding that you're going to have a gift to share with me.
So how do you do that on a screen?
So how do you do that on a screen? Okay. And it's because that was my challenge. I was like, I want to be able to continue to offer our assembly programs.
Right.
But I want it to be interactive. I want to be able to, quote unquote, bring kids up on stage and play games with them in real time. So I asked everybody I knew, how do you do that? And they're like, we don't know. And so
hasn't been done.
It has never been done. And so I said, all right, I'm going to figure out how. And it's not like we had anything else to do. So, I spent the greater part of 4 months every day, for 16 hours. And I kind of dumpster dived at work, said, okay, what cameras are you guys no longer using? Okay. I spent hours on YouTube and all of these message boards and trying to figure it out. And, I learned, it's like, okay, there's a way to be able, and it's all done over Zoom. Okay. Which, years ago, we didn't even know what that was.
No.
And so, all these schools are kind of forced to be able to, if they're not teaching remotely, they at least have the resources to do it. And so my big thing was just okay, how do we do this to where it is very interactive, it's fun, it's educational, and it's entertaining, And lo and behold, we were able to do it. And we were able to save face because we always say a good year is when we do 100 shows. Okay. So 50 in the fall, 50 in the spring. That's a good year. That's a healthy, balanced year. I mean, we've done more, nearly died. Okay. And so we were actually able to save face in this. And by the time we got it up and running, it was the spring semester of 2021.
Right.
Okay. But we had just written a test prep show. And so it's okay, we were able to get back to those pre-pandemic numbers because so many people were just we want something fun to do for our kids. We want something really fun and interactive. And we were able to do that. And even whenever I got the Rona, because it did ultimately hit our household, I was I just don't want to throw in the towel, So I was let me figure this out. And we did it completely remotely.
Wow.
Where I was at my house hitting all the buttons off screen. And, I had another performer at the stadium and we still, and we were playing games like Simon Says and a scavenger hunt and all this stuff with these kids. And it ended up being really, really cool. It was a lot of work.
Right.
And I'm happy that we're able to get back to, live and in person, flesh and blood type stuff.
But you still have this, and that may fit in somewhere somehow, and you may fit it in or whatever. But you would not have naturally done that.
Right.
You would not have spent that kind of. You were forced to, but like you said, there's always. How'd you say it? There's always a setback.
Yeah. Every great comeback starts with a setback. And I think the other thing, too, was I had such a kick in the pants just based on my previous experience with a work stoppage.
Okay.
And
you were like,
I was like, dude,
I'm going to make myself relevant here.
Yes, exactly. I'm going to assert my value.
Good.
So
see the need.
Yes. If and when the time comes,
Come on.
I'm not going to give anyone any reason
That's right.
to have my name on that list.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Because of this, that's
right.
On.
And I think too, just because I'm naturally a creative person.
That's right.
You know, if I'm like, okay, if I don't have I need to tinker.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And so if the end is ultimately going to justify the means, because no one asked me to do it. You know, no one was like, hey,
come on.
We gotta, we're not doing any of these school shows. We need to get these.
Right.
Nobody was asking. I work for an amazing group of individuals who understand, like, look, man, there's your physical health, there's your mental health.
Yep.
I've learned a lot about servant-based leadership in being with this organization.
Okay.
And how oftentimes being a leader doesn't necessarily mean that, hey, people are working for me now.
Right.
In a way, I'm kind of working for you.
That's right. That's right.
And so, they were very adamant, like, look, man, don't feel the need. I was like, because, like, to me, the biggest thing was the kids.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
It's all about the kids.
It's all about the kids. And it's
That's
kind of
it.
like, I just saw this need, whether someone was saying it or not,
Right.
I saw this need that, hey, maybe we could create kind of a beacon of light in a very dark and scary and troublesome time, not just for the kids, but also the teachers.
Right.
You know
Sure.
what I mean? Because, they were very, very vocal about, like, dude, this is such a breath of fresh air. This is really what we needed. And when we would book these, oftentimes we would be like, well, what kind of show do you want? They're like, we just want our kids to have fun. We just want to see them smiling. We want to see them having a good time. And so that it was one of my more proud moments. It was definitely hard and scary,
right?
Because it's kind of like I need to create this machine, but I'm not a mechanic. I don't know the slightest thing. So I'm gonna ask this guy, hey, how do you do this? I don't know. It's never been done. And that's what was really kind of neat, is because no other team in all of sports was doing it.
Right.
Because I know plenty of people who, when the lockdown happened, or, we started doing games without fans, they kind of just sat back and said, okay, well, I'm just going to wait and sit here until my boss tells me to do something, And that kind of goes back to the whole proactive versus reactive.
That's right.
Because I learned about proactivity at camp.
Right.
As a counselor.
See the need, own your area.
Exactly.
Make it happen.
Exactly. And so that was, almost half a lifetime ago. But it carried over ever since.
Wow.
And in the end, it was ultimately really rewarding. It was a lot of work, but I'm kind of glad that we're going back to where.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Kyle, you're so good. I've taken my kids to the ball games, and you've come over, and I'm just so impressed. With your gift, and like we didn't talk too much about this, but how you got so good at just the craft of the nonverbal, non-facial, it's really, and maybe I'm biased. Number one, because I'm from Houston,
sure,
and it's the Astros.
Uh-huh.
If it was any other team, I might not be as talkative with you because
Right.
I'm an Astro.
Fair enough.
And then just the fact that you're a Brook Hill guy,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm so impressed with the gift, that you have, and I love some of the things that you've implemented also with your team.
Mm-hmm.
You even call them maybe your JCs.
Sure.
And how you've maybe even built that. Is there anything there that how you've built that up
Yes.
from just them being your guardian,
Right.
to them being even entertainers too?
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely, and it's so interesting the way that has even grown and evolved throughout the years. And I will say this, I'm blue in the face. The team that I have this year, which was also last year, don't count 2020 and most of 2019, is the best team I've ever had.
Come on,
it's the best team that I've ever had, and I think it's due to a number of things. Obviously, you got to hire the right people.
That's right.
That's important.
It's due to leadership. Let's just say that.
Yeah, and on top of that, I think whenever there's this old cliche saying, it's like you never know how much you love something until it's taken away. And 2020 took a lot of stuff away.
Yep.
One of which was my staff.
Wow.
And so it's like, okay, because I'll be the first to admit I haven't always gotten it right.
Sure.
I'd have a guy come in, and I'm like, hey, are you good? You're looking a little like you need to leave your baggage at the door. We got people to entertain. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And that maybe it was a stressful day. Maybe not making excuses, but I've learned through that servant-based leadership. Like, okay, if someone's having an issue, like, hey man, you guys roll T-shirts. Hey man, everything all right? Are you sure?
Good.
Are you good? I mean, look,
It's good.
If you gotta go home, take a minute. We'll hold the fort down.
That's what it's all about.
Yes, and so it's interesting because I mentioned a little while ago, back in the day, being a handler or a spotter, whatever you want to call it, was just make sure no one hits me in the head. Stuff like that. Well, now with the invention of the camera phone, so it's become the biggest obstacle for any performer. Okay, because some people genuinely want to create a memory. Okay, some people want to create clout on their social media. Okay, so imagine trying to do your job, and you're constantly, hey, let me get a selfie. Can you get a picture? All this kind of stuff. So now, as much of a nuisance that it is, now you have to train up your staff to be like, okay, how do we address this to where obviously we're trying not to upset people.
Don't say don't.
Yes.
So what do we do?
Yeah, it's kind of like, okay, do you have your camera ready? As opposed to you're not ready. Sorry, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then I it's kind of funny because it's part of my training. Because unfortunately, when we do crowd work, it does like camera picture taking doesn't encapsulate a majority of the work. But we want to go out there and create moments for people. And so there's certain I call it the ABCs. Okay. Assess the situation. All right. Do they have their camera ready? What have you? Bark orders, which sounds aggressive, but I couldn't think of another B, So it's just kind of like, that's where it's like, okay, you got your camera ready? You're asserting that urgency of like, hey, we can only be here for a little bit because we have other people to create memories with. Right. And then I say count. And technically there's the ABCs and then small little s. Assess the situation, bark orders, count, because when you do 1, 2, 3, like, hey, 1, 2, 3, they do that, and then smile. Because there's much difference between like if you're taking a picture and you're smiling, right? As opposed to all that. So no, like I have a phenomenal staff, and we're all fairly close in the same age. I always, whenever I go to hire someone, I look for that. I call it the it factor. Okay. You know what I mean? Because anybody can take a picture. Anyone can. That's right. There is the 3 Ps I say. There's the practical. That's the labor intensive stuff. Right. There is the performance. That's the stuff that you're doing in front of the crowd. And then there's the professional. Okay. How you carry yourself.
Wow. So good.
As a human and as a person and as an employee, right? And every single one of them is equally important.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
When you go out in the crowd, the performance might be a little bit more important. When you get backstage, the practical might be a little bit more important. And then how you carry yourself from the minute you walk into work from the minute you're out. That's right. That's always important.
So good.
Yeah.
So good, Kyle. Gosh, man, we can unpack,
dude.
And Barton always gets on to me. He'll probably send a text even after he watches this. He's like, "You didn't unpack this, and this," and I'm like, "Man, we'd be there for hours if we unpacked all of that."
Oh, I'd love to.
Barton is an unpacker.
Yeah.
And so that's incredible. Any camp stories that you can remember? Any funny camp stories? What was the legacy of camp for you? Any fun camp stories that you look back and
fun camp story or embarrassing camp story?
Oh yeah, yes.
Oh man,
I guess embarrassing might be more of as a camper maybe. Or
no, I have some embarrassing counselor stories.
Okay,
it's like I accidentally forgot a kid at graduation.
Oh no.
Yeah. So
Stephen, I'm sure, was real soft about that.
Of course, with a microphone in his hand and everything else. So I will tell this story. It was my very first week as a senior counselor. We gotten through the week, little to no issues.
Okay.
And it's graduation.
You're feeling good about it.
I'm feeling good, but I'm also because that first week is always the craziest. You don't get any sleep because you're sitting there, you're in your bunk, and you hear something. You're like, "What was that? Is he breathing? Is he all right?" And so you want to do everything well.
Yep.
As you should all summer. But
Right.
that first one, especially for a new counselor, well, it's graduation night, and I've got 3 graduates. 2 of them are on one side of the stage, one's on the other, and I'm like, okay, there's 1, 2, 3, got it. Okay, good. Okay, whenever he says get your campers, I'm gonna get on 1, 2, 3. Okay, here we go. And then so it comes the time to go and get your graduates, and pray over them, talk about the legacy and all this stuff. I'm like, okay, here we go. You come with me. Let's do this. And I'm like, guys, it's been an amazing week. You guys have been awesome. And I hear over the microphone, Kyle from the Mustangs, and I'm like, oh no. And I look over, and Steven's right there with his graduate. And I was like, I was like so gung-ho about I'm going to do this right. It's going to be awesome. And I just, in the moment, I grabbed those 2 guys, and I forgot one. And then, so naturally, afterward, we all go up to the staff room, and everyone's like, great job, everyone, great week at camp. And I'm just kind of over there, and sure enough, here comes Steven through the door. Kyle, I was like, and I legitimately a deer in headlights.
Right.
There was nothing I could say to make that moment better.
Nope.
Nothing at all. I just kind of, and he just goes, don't ever let it happen again. I was like, okay, thanks. But it was interesting. I mean, because yes, naturally we addressed it later on.
Sure.
I had Steven talk, and it was look, you got to understand the magnitude of what happened. I was
Absolutely.
like, I do, and I will say this: it did give me a bit of a kick in the pants to be much more aware. Aware and observant. I always, and even to this day, I always talk about being completely aware of your surroundings. Even in a performance aspect in the mascot world, because you literally have limited vision, but you have to be aware of what's happening around you. And even with my staff members, I got 3 guys, and they all have specific roles within the game.
Good.
It's not just like, hey, we're all going to walk alongside, and when someone wants a picture, we do that. I got 3 guys. I got a high man, side man, low man. Side man is the guy that is with me, interacting with the fans, being the voice, creating moments.
Okay.
I've got low man, who is sitting a little down, and he's watching everyone behind us.
Good.
Okay. So he's saying, okay, who are the people that are kind of like trying to watch the game? Who's the mom who's been very patient with their child?
Good.
Okay. And then I have high man, who's watching the game and saying, okay, we're about 3 outs away.
Okay.
Because we have earpieces too.
Right. Okay.
And so we've got about 3 outs away. And so I always talk about just being completely aware of your surroundings, aware of your body language, obviously. Especially even for me, hey, when we take pictures, both hands are visible.
I did notice that. And, because of that, I actually started in the world we live in today.
Sure.
I have started to try and do that too. When I take a picture with a camper, I want to make sure, and I'm like, hey, it's what Kyle does. Melissa laughs at me, but
sure.
But it's important.
Absolutely, and it's kind of funny because even my oldest Isaac, I was looking at his bunkhouse photo this week on SmugMug, and he has a thumbs up.
Good.
Because I think I don't know if he picked that up from me.
Okay.
But even when I take pictures of the people now, I'll just give 2 thumbs up.
Okay.
But that does go back to kind of being aware, because here's kind of another funny camp story that happened weeks later.
Yep.
Okay. Similar story, different outcome.
Okay.
All right. It was the end of camp. All the campers had gone home, and I'm looking around, and I'm looking at it because this is back whenever we would print out the bunkhouse photos,
right,
and they'd be on display.
That's right.
And I'm kind of looking around like, oh, look, everyone looks so nice in their bunkhouse photos, and the staff working behind the bunkhouse photos kind of give me this look like that. I was like, okay, that was weird. So next Monday, in front of in front of the staff, Steven gets up. He has the Mustang cabin photo. No. He's like, this is a great photo.
No.
Everyone looks happy except the camper that's not here.
Ooh.
And I hear Hetty Lou Brooks go, oh, because she just happened to be, of course, just happened to be in that staff meeting. I was like, what? No, that couldn't have happened. No way. And so, and this is crazy. So I go, like, everyone's, we have our prayer time and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, I got to look at this photo. And I look at it, and I look on the back, and there's a note there,
right.
So-and-so, the name missing from the photo. And I turn, and I'm like, he's right there, So come to find out, I guess the parents or whatever, he smiled in such a way or whatever, they didn't recognize him.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I was like, and I think you even came up and you're like, what happened? I was like, I don't know. He's right there. Like I had a no-show that week. So the numbers were off.
So they miscounted and just assumed the parent was right.
And so that was a weird, two crazy stories. One, I legitimately forgot a kid. I'll own it. It really happened. And then another one I didn't, but it was just kind of like everyone thought that I did because of my history.
Right.
Yep. But I was it was all good because then after that, later that week I went up to the photo again because I always like to look at the cabin photos, and someone's like, "Are they all there?" I was like, "Yes," and I told the story. They're like, "You got in trouble for nothing?" I was like, "Yeah, but it's okay. Like we all learn."
Right. Right. I was justified though. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I do want to end here talking a little bit about and make sure I'm saying it right. The Kyle Kazoo.
Yes.
Show. Let's shift a little bit.
Okay, sure.
Because I love it. Almost everybody we talk to is still dealing with kids. Mm-hmm. Whether it's Elizabeth Pulley with the CAC, sure. Mitchell is a pediatric dentist.
Right.
I mean these are kid people. You're still a kid. You're still a Mustang senior counselor.
Yeah.
You just have different bunkhouses now that sure. You're over, whether obviously as a parent, obviously as Orbit. But this other one here I want to talk about because with our wide national audience of alumni who listen.
Yes.
They tell us about this, and we have a deck of cards here because you've always been doing this.
Sure.
You've always, even when you were a Mustang, that is what I remember about you the most. That was kind of, I always say, people all use something, right? Some people maybe play the guitar in devotions and they use that, But for you, it was always illusions, magic tricks.
Sure.
You were always doing that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I started, ironically, like right around the time that I was a camper.
Okay.
It's always so cool when you see campers kind of come in with their thing, whether that's like a kid who can do yo-yo tricks or something like I was the kid who could do illusions and magic tricks,
That's right.
And, excuse me. And so that was kind of my thing. And I remember when I became a senior counselor, Stephen was like, do you still do that illusions and stuff like that? I was like, yeah. He's like, I'm going to use it.
That's awesome.
I'm like, sweet. Okay, cool.
Awesome.
And so I had my little bag of, tricks that I had gotten and whatnot. And so anytime there was a rainy day, I'd get up there and I'd do my stuff. And back then, it was all just kind of like, hey, I can do these tricks. There's really no rhyme or reason to the routine or the show itself. Okay. And there was a lot of learning opportunities within that because, I didn't have a specific style or character or written, for lack of a better term, business plan of how I was going about doing things. I was just like, I know these magic tricks. I'm going to do these magic tricks.
Okay.
And again, I had a Stephen talk where he's like, because as the summer went on, I did get a bit more proactive. Like, hey, okay, what can I do better?
Good.
How and he said, okay, let me talk to you about your magic stuff. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And he brought up a certain scenario that had happened. I remember I had a kid up as a volunteer.
Sure.
And the kid stood up and kind of did one of these. He kind of like lost his footing for a minute. And I was like, oh, are those new flip-flops? Might want to take them back. You know what I mean?
Right.
And in my mind, it was like, okay, I'm kind of making, you stumbled a little bit. I'm making a joke of that.
Right.
But he's like, look, we never want to make kids feel uncomfortable or make them feel like they're being picked on.
Good.
Or, or something like that.
So
I was
good.
like, what? Yeah, you're right. And so that's when I really started kind of, I wouldn't say right then and there, but I always came back to that when I started creating this character. Because for the longest time, I said, you know what? I'm gonna do corporate events. I'm not doing kids parties anymore. I'm above that. I have a theater degree, and I'm a performer. I'm an actor. I'm not gonna do that. And so I got rid of all my kids stuff for a hot minute.
Wow.
Like I donated it, did whatever. But then I started having kids, and I said, oh, I'm actually really good with kids.
Right.
And I think that there is a way to go about creating something, because when I moved to Houston, we collectively decided that my wife wasn't going to work. She was going to stay home,
Sure.
raise the kids
Sure.
with aspirations of homeschooling them,
Sure.
which we still do to
Come
this
on.
day. And so I said, I need to kind of come up with a, secondary income. And so I always wanted to get back to performing. And on top of that, I kind of got kickstarted a little bit when I was between jobs. I was like, this is the only other thing I know how to do on paper. So I created a website and all that good stuff, and that kind of carried us over. But as I moved to Houston and started really marketing myself, I got call after call after call. Do you do kids' birthday parties? I'm like, no, I don't, because I'm not a babysitter, And then I remember somebody telling me this story, and I don't remember where it originated from, but they said, imagine you're living in a cave with your family. Okay. Now you can go out and kill a bison and feed your family for a couple weeks. Okay. And so they're like, the bisons are the corporate events.
That's right.
Okay. That's
right.
the big money.
That's right.
Events, stuff like that. They said, but there's tons of little squirrels living outside your cave, and you can kill a squirrel a day at a time and feed your family that way. So why are you allowing literally money to fly out the window by denying all these shows? And I said, okay, that's a good point. So I started kind of working back into it, and I started developing certain philosophies, one of which is to talk to kids like they're adults and adults like they're kids. Okay. And the reason behind that is because nothing drives me up a wall more when I see someone talking to kids like this. It's like, we're going to do a magic trick. Okay. Is everyone ready? It's like, no.
Right.
I'm going to talk to just how I'm talking to you right now.
Good.
Okay.
Really good.
Secondly, I didn't want to have, I wanted to wear just my presentation and the way I looked. I want it to be very relatable. Okay. So I wear just a t-shirt and a jacket.
Right.
I'm not wearing a tuxedo or anything flashy, anything like that. The props that I use, I wanted to be something that kids could recognize. There's tons of magic tricks, and even the ones that I did at camp, it was a fancy box that was unfamiliar.
Sure.
And a silk with a thing that's unfamiliar. I wanted to use things that were familiar that kids could relate to. Okay. And then from there, as I started creating this character, and, again, focusing on fun.
Right.
And creating moments and memories, because it's not so much kids, everyone sit still and watch what I can do.
Good.
It's like, no. We are in this together. And, I'll get parents say, well, how long is the show? I said, well, that depends on how much they're laughing, and it depends on how engaging they are. And I'll even get kids who they're pretty rambunctious. They're pretty rowdy. And we're having these moments and stuff, and parents will apologize at the end. I was like, no. That's what makes it unique. That's what makes it fun. Secondly, I wanted my show to be equally entertaining for kids as well as adults. Okay. And create something that's very family friendly, obviously, that's entertaining, and that, people could, really enjoy no matter where they are. Because I didn't want the parents to check out.
Right.
And along that entire process, I realized, I said, you know what? There's tons of magicians in Houston, but there's not the one guy who's the family entertainer. There's plenty of family entertainers, but you go to any other major metropolitan city, and it's like, okay, New York has that guy, Chicago has that guy, LA has that guy. Who's the guy in Houston? Well, best I could figure, there was an opening. So,
come on.
I created this character literally the year that I moved, and I came up with the name. It was actually in a dream, because I'm trying to figure out all this stuff. And it was so funny, because when I first started, I had like suspenders and this like orange hat. It kind of looked like a really cheap knockoff of Blippi, which I don't even watch Blippi, but I'm familiar enough with the character to know, like, wow, that was really cheesy looking. And I remember it coming to me in a dream, because my wife's saying, so when are you going to launch this Kyle Kazoo or whatever you're calling it? And I woke up and I was like, that's it. That's the name. And I sat on it for years upon years upon years upon years. And then, of course, during lockdown, had all this time on my hands to actually sit down and create a website and copy and a style and all that kind of stuff. And so it launched in August of 2020.
And what's the website?
KyleKazoo.com.
KyleKazoo.com, and you have it on Instagram.
Yep, on
you have it
Instagram, on the Facebook, all that cool stuff that all the kids are doing these days.
It's awesome.
But yeah, sure enough.
And I know in 2020 you did some of those on Zoom.
Yes, I did.
But now you're doing only in person, or do you do both?
It's a majority in person. I mean,
Okay.
I can count on one hand the amount of virtual shows I do anymore in
Okay.
any given year.
Okay.
And so that was kind of a means to an end. It's like,
Sure.
okay, because I was simultaneously learning, like, okay, here's how I can do this for assembly shows, but here's how I could do it for a magic show too if somebody asked. You know, I wasn't so much pushing it
Okay.
because Texas was actually, there was still pretty a healthy amount of individuals who were still willing to have shows in person.
Okay.
And so by time I had, kind of gotten it off the ground and launched, we were heading well into 2021. And so,
Wow, okay.
I do it, but if I can avoid it, I do.
Okay. No, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah, that's kind of what it is.
That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Man, Kyle, we appreciate you being here with us today. I just love that, all these alumni. That's the whole goal. What are we doing this podcast? I just want to talk to the Brook Hill people because Hetty's big thing was start your own Brook Hill.
Right.
And you've done that. You've started your own Brook Hill with the Kyle Kazoo, with being Orbit. I mean, you are just continuing to go out there, whether it be with your team, you're holding the ladder as they climb up, you're seeing the need, and you're just, we love just the leadership that our counselors continue. It's like you never took off the red T-shirt.
Right.
Whether you worked for a summer, and we even see, I've had JCs on the show. I've had people who they only did this, and so man, I think it's amazing what you're doing.
Yeah, well, it's the biggest thing that I've taken away, and that I try to implement, particularly with my staff, is to look for moments.
Come on.
Okay, look for and moments can happen on a grand scale. They can happen on a small scale.
That's right.
And I always tell them, like, view it almost like you're watching a movie.
Yep.
You've got wide shots, you've got close-up shots. And, whether that's with someone who may have special needs or,
right.
because in a sellout crowd, there's 45,000 people there.
That's right.
45,000 people there. But we can create a moment that can last a lifetime, whether it's just for that person. And, we're not trying to get on social media or like create a viral video or anything like that. We're just there to create moments. And I'll tell this story because I wanted to make sure to tell it.
Yes.
Because it's my favorite story to tell.
Come on.
Number of years ago, we were working a game, and the other thing too, sorry, I know we're trying to wrap up.
No, it's good.
But like the other thing too that I always took with me was don't tire of repetition,
So
and,
good.
And you got to think too, we have 81 home games during the regular season. You add in spring training and then postseason, that's 100, and our show by and large is exactly the same day in and day out, with the exception of maybe an Orbit skit that we're doing or a pregame ceremony or something that may require some additional creativity or additional moving parts. So that's why I always say, hey guys, look for moments. It's easy to tire of repetition. It's easy to get fatigued. But remember, it's always someone's first game, all that good stuff. Well, anyway, we're working through the crowd and I see a guy who is blind.
Wow.
Okay, like very clearly blind. Has the cane. All that good stuff. And so we sometimes operate with hand signals. There's certain hand signals that mean certain things. And so I do this, which basically means, okay, guys, create a perimeter because we're about to have a moment. Okay, and so I get in front of this guy. Okay, and he's an older gentleman, probably mid-50s, something like that. Grab the hands, all that kind of stuff. And he's like, "Well, what's this?" And it's like, "Hey man, that's Orbit." And I'm doing the thing like, "Look, here's my face." All this kind of stuff, like just letting them feel the fur, because what we do is largely a visual form of entertainment. I'm going to come out here, I'm going to do this dance, I'm going to do this skit, whatever, but it's usually visually entertaining, visually funny. So I start interacting with this guy and he starts crying, tears in his eyes. And he goes, "Orbit, I don't know who you are, but I can feel God in you." Isn't that something? I tell that story all the time because it's like, dude, sometimes I always like to say that we work in sports entertainment, but we're not in the sports industry. We're not in the entertainment industry. We're in the business of bringing joy to people's lives.
That's it.
And it's so crazy. Like, you'll never have a moment unless you're looking for it, and you'll never be looking for it unless you're aware. You know what I mean?
So
and
true.
So yeah, like I wanted to be sure to share that story.
Yes.
Because I love.
Thank you for that.
And
That's awesome.
I tell that to people anytime I'm bringing on a new staff member or anything like that. And, Houston's an incredibly diverse city, and so I tell that story.
Yep.
Unapologetically, uncensored, and I was like, look, I don't know what your beliefs may be.
That's right.
But you can't hear that story and tell me that we're not making an impact.
Come on.
You know,
God, that's what it's all about, Kyle. And
Yeah.
that's why I love having our alumni on here, because they all have just such a heart for people, and that just exudes from you, you know. And I appreciate you coming on here and talking. I mean, this is what it's all about: life, legacy, leadership. And man, appreciate you, my friend. Thank you for coming
got it.
on.
You got
And,
it. Did you want me to do this really quick?
Yeah. What do you got? I
you
didn't
mentioned-
know if you were shy. I didn't know
No,
if you
I mean,
didn't have anything.
I got something for
Okay,
you, for
let's
you, my
see.
friend. So we're gonna do a card trick. Now, do you know why we call them card tricks?
No.
It's because he used cards.
Okay.
There we go. All right, David. I'll keep it really simple. I'm gonna do it like this. You get to take a free sample, any one you want. It doesn't matter which one.
Okay.
That one.
Okay.
No, I made you pick that one. All right, here we go. Any one you want. Take a look at it.
Okay.
Show your friends and family at home. Don't let me see. It's a lot more impressive if I don't know what it is.
Okay.
All right. Now here, you just say stop whenever you feel the urge.
Stop.
Right there. Place your card right there. Now, David,
Right
I'm going
there.
to give you the option.
Okay.
Would you like me to shuffle them?
Yes.
Okay. We'll give them a little bit of a shuffle.
Wow.
All right.
Okay.
Now, would you like to shuffle them?
Yes.
I'm not going to let you.
Okay.
But there's a reason.
Okay.
Okay, because
Okay.
I was doing an event not too long ago.
Okay.
And a guy said, hey, if you're so good, why don't you let me shuffle them? I'm a nice guy.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, sure, I'll let
Okay.
you shuffle them. But look, this is what he did. He shuffled the cards like this.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Like, I was like, dude, what in the... And so look, if you think about it, like all of the cards are all sorts of different directions. Like
Yes.
some are face up, some are face down, some are in the
Yes.
middle. I thought, you know what? Maybe I can fix this. So I snapped my fingers like this. And look, each and every one of the cards
No.
went back
No.
to the way they originally were, except one. Do you remember yours?
Yes.
Did it just happen to be
Yes.
the King of Hearts?
Oh. Where's
There you
the
go.
clap? Where's the clap thing right there? Let's
Thank you.
go.
Thank you, both of
Kyle Kazoo,
That's
Kyle
it.
Hamsher, Mustangs Bunkhouse, Life, Leadership, Legacy.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you, Kyle.
Yes, sir. My
Come
pleasure.
On. So fun. That's what the Mustangs brings to the table, just so you know. Was that fun?
That was so much fun.
That was so much fun. It is 11.